Welcome to On The Record, a new music business podcast from Billboard and SickBird Productions. I'm your host, Kristen Robinson, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Elliot Grainge, CEO and chairman of Atlantic Music Group and founder of his own label, 10K Projects. I wanted to have him on to chat because Elliot became the CEO of Atlantic almost exactly a year ago today, a move which shocked many in the music industry when it happened. Elliot was just 30 years old at the time and hadn't spent that much time working within the major label system before his hiring. Instead, he cut his teeth building his own independent label, 10K Projects, working with artists like Ice Spice, Trippie Redd, and Surfaces. His first foray into the major label system was when he sold a stake in his company to Warner Music Group in 2023. But if any 30-year-old could take on the CEO job at a label as big as Atlantic, it might be Elliot. That's because he's been raised in one of the most storied music industry families in history. His father, Elliot Grainge, is the CEO and chairman of Universal Music Group, the largest major music company in the business and a competitor of Warner Music Group's. And Elliot also has other industry ties. His grandfather ran a record shop, his cousin was an early champion of Amy Winehouse, and his uncle founded Ensign Records, home to Thin Lizzy and Steve Miller Band. In just a year at Atlantic, Elliot has already put some impressive wins on the board. He propelled Ordinary by Alex Warren to the top of the Hot 100 and pop airplay charts. He's also broken other songs like No One Noticed by the Marias and Azizam by Ed Sheeran, and many more. Plus, Atlantic has the #1 album on the Billboard 200 this week and last week. So last week it was 21 Pilots that was in the top spot, and this week it's Cardi B at #1. So it felt like the perfect time to have Elliot on and to review his first year at Atlantic, and also to talk about the future of record labels at a time when the industry seems to be changing very fast. But before we get started, as a journalist and a host, it's very important to me to disclose that previous to my role at Billboard, I did work at 10K Projects starting in spring 2020. But weirdly, because of the COVID lockdowns, I worked entirely remotely, so this is my first time meeting Elliot in person. It's a real full circle moment for me and kind of crazy that that happened. But enough for me. Let's go ahead and bring in our guest this week. Please welcome to the show, Elliot Grainge. Welcome, Elliot, to On The Record. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I love that we're doing this today because back in the day, about 5 years ago, at the height of the pandemic, I did actually work at your label, 10K Projects. But I didn't get to meet you in person because of the weirdness that is COVID lockdowns. So this is a fun moment of meeting for the first time 5 years later.
You promised me 5 years ago when we didn't meet that if we were to ever do a podcast together, you would ask me easy questions and you would make me look very good.
Yes, I remember promising that. Yep. I wanted to get into this by talking about 10K. I'm wondering, for you as the CEO of the company, what was it like actually running it during the pandemic? What kind of things had to change?
It was a very interesting time. We were having a lot of success with some artists. So from the artist and song breaking perspective, it was a really, really good time. It was a very difficult time because so many of us who loved coming into the office, we weren't able to do so. Yourself is a good example. We weren't able to be with each other. I think that was one of the real stresses of the pandemic. So I remember our office building, we weren't able to actually physically go into the office. They had closed the building down.
Yeah.
So I think that would be one of the stressors. I think one of the good things that happened is we, as an independent label, super nimble, we were able to pivot and we were able to see that people weren't in their cars as much. They were at home. They weren't necessarily at schools or in the office, consumers. And so we were able to figure out that they were online. They were on TikTok. They were on Instagram. And so we were able to use some of the savings that we had from our office. We didn't go to the office. We weren't paying the rent, and we invested 100% of those savings into influencer marketing, which we'd already been doing before. So we were really able to press that, and as a result, we had tremendous success with some of the. I think I'm biased. I think there were some of the greatest songs of the pandemic with Surfaces, Sunday Best. We had Say and Release. Mad at Disney. We had Peachtree Rascals. We were able to help put some great music out that got a lot of people through some tough times.
I mean, it's kind of crazy to look back at that time because TikTok was just taking off. It sounds like y'all were already doing some influencer marketing there beforehand, invested more into it during the pandemic. At what point did you end up coming into contact with Homemade Projects, which is Zach Friedman and Tony Talama's company?
Yeah, my partners.
Mm-hmm.
They're the greatest. We crossed paths in, I would say, middle of 2016, and they were managing a couple of influencers. One of the people that they were managing, very young guy, and I sort of watched how they moved when it came to seeing the power of influencers' channels and how they could monetize their channels. And one of the mediums that they would look at was through music. We noticed each other. You're doing that. That's pretty cool. We're doing this. And we stayed super close. And then about a year later, they brought an artist to me that they were managing that we signed. Great artist.
Who was it?
And then it was an artist called Austin.
Oh, yes. Okay. Austin without the, it's like AUSTN.
We had to change, exactly.
Yeah.
We had to change the name and the song. There was a great record called In Between, and he was very, very young, great, super talented, very good songwriter. So we had some initial success there, and then afterwards, they called me and they said, "There's another great artist that we really want to do a partnership with you on, a great duo called Surfaces, based in Texas." And so we signed. That was the first real big success that we had with them. And I just said to them, "You guys are you're so brilliant. We should do this instead of you just managing. We should do this in the form of a partnership." And so I gave through 10K. I gave Zach and Tony through their company, Homemade Projects, the venture, which we ended up merging, consolidating, and as part of that consolidation, Zach and Tony stayed on and essentially became co-presidents of the company.
Before Homemade kind of came in, or I mean, even during that period, you were signing a lot of SoundCloud rap. I wasn't in the industry at the time when you started doing that, but was there a lot of competition in that space to sign SoundCloud rap, or were you one of the earliest people on that?
I'd say my senior year of college, 2015 era, all of the kids in college were discovering new music. Everyone wants to be first, and the platform that everyone was discovering the music from was SoundCloud. So I sort of became infatuated with it. You'd look at the charts, you'd look at what was hot and trending, and so it became a very important website and platform for me to discover artists. Were other people looking at the artists on SoundCloud? Yes. So I think Billie Eilish was one of the artists that started to cultivate her audience. I know Post Malone was. It was a great platform, still is, where artists could go and test with their fans, put music up, put snippets up.
Yeah.
Not necessarily released on Spotify or other DSPs or Apple Music.
So there was competition at that time for signing
without question.
Yeah.
Without question.
So how did you beat them out as someone who was so young at the time, still in college when you're working on starting the label, right?
I grew up as a kid loving punk rock. I was a very nerdy kid, still am, living in London, and I loved The Clash, I loved the Sex Pistols. I loved hearing the stories of if you were at a concert in the Hammersmith Apollo in 1977, if you didn't get a drink thrown on you or someone spat on you in the mosh pit at these sort of punk rock concerts. To me, that was really cool. And I could see something forming through the sort of, I'd say almost the subculture of SoundCloud, where you had these artists, controversial artists like XXXTentacion, and you had artists that were incredibly talented, part of this sort of subculture of SoundCloud. Trippie Redd was one of them, which was the first artist on SoundCloud that we sort of worked with. And it reminded me, when I went to some of the shows, it was very, very early. It reminded me of the energy reminded me of what the stories I had heard from that mid to late 1970s, that sort of anarchy, punk rock, that real youth culture energy.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, as someone who had just finished college that was obsessed with the music industry and always wanted to find the next thing, I was very drawn to that energetically, sonically. Some of those copyrights today, they're special records. There'll be songs that our kids and our grandkids will be listening to one day. So I was infatuated by that movement at the time.
But how did you beat out some of the more established players who are also going after your Trippie Reds of the world?
I would say a lot of the executives, and we'll sort of go through how the business has historically worked and how it's sort of moving now. They weren't looking towards the subcultures of SoundCloud. They weren't. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of young people, they're the ones that are really pushing the sound forward. As much of as incredible amount of respect that we have as an industry for some of the incredible executives at the top of their pyramid, I think it's the youth culture. I believe that it's a lot of the younger people in the company that are able to sort of smell what other younger people are listening to in real time. So I think I was poised. I was very fortunate where I could see that. And it was very difficult for a lot of these artists to get real attention from some of the other labels. There weren't that many independent labels around that were looking in that system, in that genre in 2016. So I was very fortunate. I think it was I was fortunate. I think it was the right time and the right place for 10K.
And you're talking about the importance of being a young person and being able to sense where culture was moving. I often think about how music is such a young man's game oftentimes, and you're still very young. I'm wondering, your father has been able to age really gracefully, continue to have success, and continue to have perhaps the most success he's ever had. Have you learned anything from him about what it takes to kind of surpass moving from just being that young person who's young and eager to making it to the next level as an executive?
I can't speak for him, but some of the things that I've noticed around his, I would say, how he manages is he really respects the opinions of a lot of his leaders and a lot of the people around him. So to your point, who is closer, who has the best understanding of what the younger generations want to consume? It's the younger generations. And I think he's wise enough to know that these people that are going to pick who the next generation want to listen to, that's going to be a younger generation. So I think it's similar to what we do and what we and what a lot of the smart people do, is you've got to back that generation. You've got to back the younger people, as you say. I agree with you. I think it's a young man's game, a young person's game.
Not only do you have to pick the right talent to sign, you also need to pick the right talent in your building, your research A&Rs, your A&Rs who can pick out the right stuff.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about it's about the team. One thing that we did really well, we continue to do really well with 10K and now at Atlantic, is we've put together an incredible team. We're a team of fans, entrepreneurs, winners, but ultimately the one common theme that we all have is we love working with artists. We like to back artists in any form that we can. Mm-hmm. Every company can say, we've got the best team and experience, and I'm 100%, experience is very important, but I'd love for you to come up to the office at some point and see it. There's a really special energy that we have of just people that love music, that love working for artists.
And I guess going back to that SoundCloud rap bit, that was such a scene, but it was on a online platform. Of course, there were a lot of people in SoundCloud rap who were from similar areas. You saw a lot of South Florida going on there. But I mean, Trippie is from Ohio,
yes.
right?
Yes.
6ix9ine was from New York. Like you have people from all over. Yeah. Do you think that local scenes are still a thing in 2025, or have local scenes migrated to just niche online spaces?
Local scenes are and have been historically incredibly important. They will continue to be important. I think sonically you can taste something that came out of Southern Florida from 2014 to 2018, 2019. You can taste that moment. Maybe now today less so. I think after the pandemic, it really pushed artists to instead of start their first 2 or 3 concerts, their shows in the local venue, 100, 200 cap. I think now what they're doing is they're waiting for the larger cap to try their first concert, and they're able to get there by building a fan base online slightly quicker than they were before.
When you don't do your 10,000 hours in the tiny venues and then you get put on a giant stage, it's very, very intimidating, and a lot of artists are not up to it. There's at least a large learning curve for starting in those larger venues. But most things are taking place online post-pandemic, and the pandemic quickened that movement online.
It's been great, and it's also been not so great, where artists who are having incredible streaming moments and online moments, they weren't able to actually touch the fans. They weren't able to go out for that sort of 12, 18-month period of the pandemic worldwide. They weren't able to go and perform their song and touch the fans. And so I think that was very, very difficult.
There was this time period of early TikTok, which I think we've exited now, like 2019 to maybe 2023-ish, where you were seeing a lot of one-hit wonders, a lot of artists that were popping off that didn't have any movement before, which is very exciting. But then exiting the pandemic must have been quite a challenge for a lot of these artists, given they'd never made that fan connection in person. They had their moment on the algorithm, and I would say some of them probably weren't ready to capitalize on it. I forget who told me this, but they were talking about how you never want to have your viral moment too early. You want to always have a bunch of songs ready to go as soon as it happens. And I think that there was this weird period where people were trying things out online. You even saw artists performing unfinished songs on TikTok that would do well. And then they would get into that challenging space where they have to go record it and try to be as faithful to their random video as possible. But yeah, I feel like we've exited that time period a little bit.
If you look at the artists that are now established over the last sort of 12, 18 months, if we look at the Sabrina Carpenters or the Chapel Roans or the Marias, these are artists that talk about 10,000 hours. They've been releasing music. They were signed, I think, almost 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they were releasing music and touring before the pandemic, towards releasing music during the pandemic, and then afterwards. And if you look at their success now and their consistency and their fan base, it shows you now it's taking several years of artist development for the fans to really connect and take artists to that top tier. So I think what a big focus that we're trying to do at the moment is really, really stay true, be very patient with the artist development. It can take several years, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that makes it really hard to know when it's a right time to cut an artist where it's not working anymore, or when to keep investing. What are those kind of conversations that y'all are having inside of Atlantic about how long should you give an artist to develop, and how many resources should you give them while they're developing, I guess?
So I think the partnership with the artist is very, very important. And we as a record label, we have a responsibility to be very patient, to support, not just to fund, but to actually support on a sonic, on a creative level, and be very, very patient with artists. The answer is it should take as long as it needs to. Not every artist is going to break to that level of superstardom. But we have a responsibility, if we're going to get into business with an artist, to be the greatest partners that we can for them.
For major record labels now, is it important to also pursue kind of that middle tier of artists as well, not just being I often hear when talking about majors, people will be like, we're in the business of superstars. And that's true. But given we now have a much more fragmented music market, is there also increasing value in having kind of those middle tier acts that have a strong fan base but will never be probably a radio number one.
So it's funny, this middle market, I think it's always been there. I think it's definitely got larger. If you think about the macro industry and where we are, you have 1 million tracks being added to DSPs every day. So you have several 100,000 to 1 million new tracks added on a weekly basis. When you look at that, you're 100%, you're going to see so many layers and tiers of artistry, from songs and test songs to the A-list stars that are recording and releasing, and then that sort of is what you define as that middle tier. The answer is 100%. See, I look at the middle tier, and our team looks at the middle tier as that may be middle tier today with a niche fan base, but with the right partnership and the right time and the right support, could an artist from that middle tier that we partner, so the answer is yes, we should partner. Can that be, does that artist want to be in the superstar category? And the answer is 100%. We're finding a lot more artists in that tier, waiting, helping support, helping put the plans together. The goal is to get them to the superstardom.
I find Atlantic to be so interesting because you're very forward-thinking, very tech-focused, very data-focused label executive, but also you have come into Atlantic, which is a very storied, older label. So I'm wondering, have you examined the history of Atlantic much and thought about that and how that informs your strategy today? Tell me a little bit about that transition.
It was started by an entrepreneur, Turkish entrepreneur, Ahmet Erdogan, and he was in many ways he was a huge disruptive force in the music business. Some of the artists that he signed, how he viewed the business. And so I think if you look at the history of Atlantic from the very, very beginnings of it to where it is today, it's been a company that has always backed entrepreneurial spirit because that's where it's come from. I never viewed Atlantic, even when we were competing with Atlantic, I never viewed them as an old school brand. I always viewed Atlantic as a storied, incredible label. I think it's, personally, as a fan of music, I think it's the best, most diverse label of genres, of artists, of all the labels. So when you marry that history and that entrepreneurial spirit, which we've got now, obviously, with the greatest team, great entrepreneurial team, we start to see magic happen. And so it's been 1 year. We've had to go through a lot of restructure at the company, difficult restructure. But in the last 12 months, I can't think of, as a fan of the music industry and as a fan of Atlantic, I can't remember the last time a record label has had such quick success with such a great different variety of artists.
Yeah.
With between Raven Lenae, Alex Warren, the Marias, some incredible success with Charlie XCX. We're in the midst of rolling out the albums now. With Cardi B and Ed Sheeran and 21 Pilots at the moment. So just, obviously I'm biased, but I think it's the most incredible brand in all of the recorded industry in the world. We're very, very, very lucky to work in this industry and to sort of help bring back some of that entrepreneurial energy to that incredibly historic, storied brand. I think we're seeing great success, and I hope to continue showing even more success.
If you could walk me through kind of what your first few days were at Atlantic, if you can think back to a year ago, what were some of the things you immediately thought, okay, I need to reshape this part of the company to be a little bit more in line with what I'm thinking? Can you walk me through what immediate changes you kind of noticed that you wanted to make?
Two things is we had to examine why, to your point earlier, why the Atlantic perhaps had felt a bit tired. Now, I don't think it did, but a lot of people may have felt that way. You had an incredible leader before, formidable character who'd been there for I think almost 2 decades. incredible success. It was very, very difficult for us to examine not necessarily what the issues were, but how we could build on how good the company was and how we could make it better. And so we had to look at the most important thing about record company is the artist, or the artist being serviced. And so we had to take some very, very difficult decisions. We had to downsize some of the staff so we could reinvest back into the artists. And so that was really what we were able to do. Very, very, very difficult to do that. We've got some incredible people we had to say goodbye to. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to, as a record label, efficiently allocate our resources to our artist partners as well as we could do. So I think that was something that was very difficult, but something that we had to do.
Got it. So you invested some of the money from staff cuts into more signing new artists or investing in the artists that you had on the roster?
Sure.
Okay, got it. And also I'm curious, as the restructure continues to take place, where are the areas that you are most interested in investing in on the staff? Is it digital marketing? Is it research A&R? What kinds of things are you looking at?
We sold half of the business. Prior to our team moving into Atlantic, we'd sold half of the company, 10K, to Warner Music Group, which is the parent company. And so what we were able to do after we took over Atlantic was move 10K into the Atlantic Music, into that group.
It's Atlantic, it's 10K, 300?
300.
And
we're adding a couple more brands.
Is Elektra still a thing? Or
Elektra absolutely is still a thing.
Okay.
We were able to consolidate a lot of the incredible teams together, and I think part of the consolidation with 10K and having 10K move into that collective of all the Atlantic brands, it allowed us to bring our, I think, best in class influencer marketing, digital marketing department. It allowed us to bring an incredible, super young adaptive research team. So these are the tools and these are the teams that we've really been able to bring in to this storied brand. We're seeing incredible results already in the first year.
There were some wins that you guys put on the board immediately, but also I'm sure there are some people who were like, well, but are we sure it wasn't under, stuff that Julie Greenwald set up or something? When do you feel like was that dividing line where you felt like you could fully claim, like, I really feel like I set up these hits. I feel like my team did this in the last year.
So I think it was a really great collaboration between the sort of the new team that were coming in and also the previous team that were exiting. I think both teams were really able to hold hands during the handoff period. So I think that there's a lot of shared success with outgoing and incoming team with some of those early wins. It's very, very hard to say. I think some of these artists that we've seen great success this year. They're incredible artists. Would have they had the same success with the previous regime or another company? I think 100%. I think they're incredible artists. I don't really look at it like that of who should get the credit for it. I think if an artist is doing well with a specific label or a specific team, not worth looking into it. I think it's great. It's excellent. You keep going. You keep doubling down. You work with that. As we said before, it takes several years to really be on that journey for an artist to hit that moment. Alex Warren, he's been in it for a few years. He just won Best New Artist at the VMAs. We see a lot of excitement for him in the long term as well. Would have Alex made it with another team? I think 100%. I think he's brilliant.
Yeah. So are you one of the people that believe that kind of like good talent will always rise to the top?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The team is very important. An artist has to have an excellent management team. They've got to have the right people internally guiding them. But I think it's a very important partnership, that label artist relationship and partnership. I think it's incredibly important. The trust is important. Record labels can pull levers, and internationally and domestic through, you would say, old school mediums and also new school mediums like digital marketing, old school mediums sometimes being domestic terrestrial radio. But there are things that the labels can do that really help artists find their audience. I think that's our job.
Can you walk me through creating a hit? Like, let's use Ordinary by Alex Warren as an example. It's been at the top of the Billboard charts most of this summer. What are the steps along the way to getting it to radio?
He's extraordinary.
He's not ordinary, he's extraordinary.
I would say he's extraordinary, not ordinary. He's got an incredible voice. He's a star. When you feel him, he's a true artist. Mm-hmm. And he was able to collaborate with some other incredible writers and producers to make this one specific song. We use Ordinary as the example. He releases the song to a massive amount of fanfare.
Okay, so was there like kind of a pre-save campaign or him teasing it out beforehand so there was momentum before it even...
I shouldn't go into too much of the detail. Alex, who he really understands social media. He's cultivated a great fan base online. He's doing massive shows, but he's also has an incredible audience online. And so what I think part of his magic trick is he will tease songs if he feels like it. And I think what that does is that allows his fans to feel as though they're with him during the writing process. So it makes them feel more engaged with the song before it's even been released. From there, you can tell immediately within the first several hours to the first week how big a song can be. Mm-hmm. You can also hear a song and go, that makes sense for this types of audience. You can analyze what that type of audience is. And so to answer your question with radio, we have just broken the media-based record last week. That we've made history with Alex Warren and Ordinary. I think it's now 15 or 16 weeks at number one at top 40. So an incredible story. We'll hear that song in 15, 25, 50 years' time, and we will remember where we were when that song was number one at the charts now. So very exciting times, and everyone's different, but he's an extraordinary example.
I feel like over the course of the last 10 years of your career, you've worked with a lot of great singles, a lot of viral internet hits, but also with stuff like Ordinary that has succeeded in more of a traditional way with stuff like radio. What is the longevity of both of those types of hits? Is the longevity of that copyright the same? Or do you see a different decay, I guess, as those songs age?
I think good music, good songs, good artists, I think they are forever. They are with us. When you go to a wedding, when you go to a birthday party, when you listen to the music, you can be there for 2, 3, 4 hours. These are songs that have been there since the 50s and the 60s to last month that you're hearing next to each other. I think a song like Ordinary by Alex Warren will be in both birthday parties and weddings forever. I'm very, very confident of that.
I'm sure this quote has come back to haunt you a few times. The LA Times interview a few years ago, you said that major labels are a conveyor belt of 100 other priorities. I'm wondering, now that you're at a major label, how you feel about those quotes. Do you feel like you've
I don't recall saying that. I will stand by what I have said before. One of the things that we're doing at Atlantic is we're making sure that we've said it before, so we are doubling down on the artists that we truly believe in, that we have a great partnership with, whether that's 1, 50, 100, 1,000, it doesn't matter. The last few years with social media, and I think the rhetoric around record labels has been slightly negative. Mm-hmm. And being on the independent side and now being on the major side and having that experience in both, what I can tell you is a record label is a collective of 1 to several hundred individuals that love music, love working with artists. They're human beings. Do they get it right all the time? No, they're not robots. But these are people that care about artistry, These are people that care about doing good business with artists and helping them find not just their voice, but also their audience. So you always hear about the big bad wolf, the label this, the label that. And that's fine. That's how people vent. That's how people sort of, it's easy to pass blame on things. I think that's human nature. But I think being outside and now being inside, this is a collective of people of all walks of life, of all ages. They're working every day, sometimes 70, 80 hours a week, to just help artists and to work with artists. I've learned a lot from being in. I think a lot of my mindset has changed from sitting on the inside of a major label, which is the respect I have for the industry. It was always there. I think it's gone up tenfold because I'm seeing and I'm working with so many of these people that they wake up, they just want to help artists. They want to find artists and they want to help work with artists. They want to help artists. So for me, that's been really special to see.
And prior to taking the helm of Atlantic, you were working, doing your own independent thing. But I mean, arguably, given your father was already working in the industry, and you've said several times before that oftentimes as a kid you would go to the office with him and sit there and watch him work. I'm wondering if that gave you some unique insights into this industry, and if you have any specific stories about times going to the office with your dad and learning something new.
Yeah, he's my dad. I love him. He's my best friend in so many ways. I grew up and I was born into quite a tragic and unfortunate circumstance where essentially my mother was very ill in hospital, and my father, who was an A&R executive in a British label, he had moved closer to the office to be closer to me. So when I was very young, I would get into the habit. I was too young to remember this, but I would always go in and see my dad working in the office. So I was very fortunate to be able, in a bad situation, learn, listen to the conversations around, listen to mixes, watch clips of music videos on VHS. That was my upbringing. I didn't know anything. That was it. That was the norm for me.
Yeah. And your grandfather owned a record store, correct?
He had a
right?
record store.
Okay. So do you collect vinyl by chance?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I used to trade vinyl when I was like 12, 13 in London. I used to go, they used to have this huge vinyl fair in Olympia in just off Kensington High Street, and I used to go there. And I was always the youngest kid in all of this. Hundreds of people, you had all these American collectors that used to come over for this vinyl fair. And I would take some pocket money and I would go and I would trade, I would barter. That was the first, I would say, arena of commerce that I'd ever experienced. The fact that it was around music and vinyl is very special. It's quite telling. And then my late uncle Nigel, he started a great independent label in the 70s called Ensign. Worked with some incredible artists. Sinead O'Connell was one, Thin Lizzy, Boomtown Rats. So all of my life, I've been around family members and record executives and their friends who are in a marketing department or an A&R department. My cousins are in the music industry. That was the norm. Conversations around breakfast, I would hear things, I would learn things. I was very, very, very fortunate in that sense.
Did you ever reject it and want to run away from that?
Never.
Wow.
Never.
There was no teenage rebellion period where you were just like,
Never.
I need to be different.
It was all I knew. I think you hear these stories of families that all of them are doctors or all of them served in the army. And I think that's quite similar to my experience, but instead of being a doctor or being in the army and serving, it was the industry, the music industry.
Mm-hmm. That must have been really fun for your father to have a son who took such a great interest in the same kinds of things that he was interested in. Do you hope that someday your daughter Eloise will want to also be in music?
Well, she's going to take over the world one day and be the benevolent dictator of the universe. So if she wants to start in the music industry, that would be wonderful. She is going to serve a very important purpose if she wants to further on down the line. But she's my flippy flops.
Oh my gosh. Well, is there any music that you guys have to listen to ad nauseum because she's a toddler and always probably wants to listen to the same thing?
The Wheels on the Bus is our song in the car, which is, it makes my ears bleed, but for some reason my wife seems to like that song. I don't know why, because Eloise likes it. I play her all the genres. She's currently loving Michael Jackson, Beat It. I'll play that. Yeah. She'll dance and she'll smile. I played her this morning Roxy Music, More Than This. Mm-hmm. She was swaying. I got I could see her hips kind of swaying to Roxy Music. And then obviously when I went to the Oasis concert here.
Oh, how was it?
Incredible.
Yeah. Are they one of your faves? I feel like everyone's coming out of the woodwork and saying I'm a huge Oasis fan. I'm like,
how about this?
All of you?
I will say something that might come off quite outspoken here. If you are British and you grew up in the United Kingdom in the 90s and you are not an Oasis fan, you are a sociopath.
Those are fighting words.
You are a sociopath. They were incredible. They were brilliant.
So my boyfriend is from the UK, grew up in the 90s. He's more of a Blur fan. How do you feel about that? Is that acceptable?
Fine. Okay. Fine. Got no quarrel with Blur. I'm also a big Blur fan. They're not Oasis.
So Oasis takes the cake of the two.
I think Oasis are the most important British band probably since the Beatles.
The show looked incredible. I heard that the Rose Bowl was a little bit chaotic, but it was a good show.
They were incredible, but I played what did I play? I was playing Eloise Wonderwall. I played her She's Electric. I don't think She's Electric was on the set list. And she liked She's Electric. She liked Champagne Supernova. Eloise has a very her taste in music for a 16-month baby is quite impressive.
She'll have a very encyclopedic knowledge of things.
I think so.
Yeah. You got to work in the punk at some point, but maybe that's a little bit, that's a few years off.
Not yet. We'll do that, but we'll do that on her 4th birthday.
Yeah, that might be a little scary for now. But I'm curious. So over the course of your career, you've had a ton of success with a lot of singles. I'm wondering what your thoughts are now on how important an album is for an artist. Does it still carry the same weight as it once has?
Now, some artists are more single-driven, and some artists are more sort of album-driven body of work artists. So I don't think it's either type A or type B. I think it's our job as a label to identify what artists want, where their audience, how their audience consumes music, if they're better off dropping singles and building towards an album, or if they're better off creating one body of work. Each artist, each genre, and each fan base wants a different. Each consumer, they want something different from each of their artists that they're following. It's not as cookie cutter as that.
Something that's so interesting about diving deeper and deeper into how the industry works and how fandom works is realizing that in different genres, you have completely different consumer behavior. So a country fan is probably more likely to buy an album, than a pop fan. But also a K-pop fan loves a collectible, so maybe they'll buy multiple versions. Everyone kind of has their idiosyncrasies.
Yes.
And it's quite interesting to see how it all works. And I mean, you just moved into launching a Nashville or a country label, correct? Okay.
Nashville Country Americana.
Yeah.
Outpost, which we're really, really excited about.
I like the name. That's a good name. So are you hiring a bunch of people in Nashville right now? Like, how does that work? Launching?
So this was an idea that two of our partners, Jeff Levin and Ian Cripps, this was something that they've been looking at building for a while. And they presented this to all of the team. We were like, why aren't we doing this? This is genius. So we've taken a lease on an amazing house in Nashville. Can't tell you the address.
Is it on Music Row?
We're in it is in Music Row.
Okay, well that narrows it down a bit.
We will be there. But look, we're seeing what's going on within that genre and within that type of music. and it's without question, it's breaking into the zeitgeist. So it would be very foolish of us not having an outpost there to be able to discover and help artists in that pocket, in that genre of music.
Country, it feels like it's been hot for a couple years now. Do you see any signs of that slowing down, or do you still think that you're striking while the iron's hot?
We are at the very beginnings.
You think?
Of country Americana. It's beginning. It's just beginning now.
Interesting.
I'm very bullish on that. Very, very, very bullish. I'm very biased. I love that music personally, but I'm incredibly bullish on that.
Have you always listened to country as a Brit?
Always.
Okay.
Ask me my favorite country song or artist.
Who's
Shania Twain.
Okay, what's Shania Twain song though?
You're Still the One's got to be.
Okay.
That's probably it.
That's a good one.
Man, I Feel Like a Woman was a bop in the 90s. That was an amazing record as well.
That's a very good karaoke song.
It's great.
I did do that once. It was a good time.
She's the queen.
Yeah.
She's the queen. It's
interesting how kind of genres ebb and flow over time. And I know you're saying you think that country is going to be on this wave for a while. It's interesting. I was recently looking at some numbers from Luminate, and back in 2020 for hip hop, it had like a 30% market share. Now it's down to 25%.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Have you noticed that, given you've had such like a long career working with rappers and hip hop artists, that the genre is experiencing some sort of a dip? Where do you see the genre going in the next few years?
I think music is very cyclical. There's the ebbs and flows. I think we've seen this incredible, enormous boom. There've been several booms with hip hop within the music landscape, and we saw an unprecedented boom from 2015, 2016 to 2021 to 2022, that sort of 6-7 year period. You'd look at the charts on any given month during that 5-year period, and 30, 40, 50% of the charts were littered with the hip hop genre, which is great. I'm a hip hop head. I love all music, but hip hop is that was the beginnings of 10K, so I understand that genre as well. I think it's cyclical. I think fast forward 12, 18 months, we may see the same with country and Americana. We might see it with Latin in 3 or 4 years. We're having that moment with Latin now. I wouldn't look too much into it. I think I come from the school of a brilliant artist will come out of nowhere and revitalize the genre and push the genre forward. You can never, data's data, you can never bet against hip hop.
And I'm wondering, for you as an executive, I imagine that it's very easy, if you're not trying, that 99% of your day gets taken up by admin and approvals and kind of all the executive level stuff. But obviously, to be a great executive, you also need to be planning for the future and looking towards strategy. How do you carve out that time for yourself, and do you have like a practice for it?
I wouldn't say I have a practice. We have an incredible team. So I really mean this. It's not like there's one person making all of the decisions on every part of the business. What I try and do as an executive is I really try and empower my partners and the people that work with us. So they have agency, they have ownership of their department. So by doing that, that gives me some time to think about what you said, the future strategy. Where should we be investing? How should we be looking at artist rollouts? What is wise? What is smart in this genre versus this genre? That really gives me the capacity. But like I said, it's not me making all of the decisions. We've really empowered an incredible team of young executives, old executives. It doesn't matter what they are. We've just got an incredible team of experts in field.
One of the areas that I'm super interested in right now as a journalist, and it sounds like you might be interested in this too. You said at a conference something about how you're not sure what Gen Alpha and Gen Beta are going to be looking towards in the future as far as music. Like, we really can't see in a crystal ball what these future generations are going to want from music and how they'll interact with it and whether they'll care about AI, all that stuff. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that. Have you been researching into that and looking towards that future generation of music consumers?
Absolutely. Well, some of them aren't, they haven't been born yet, but I think if we
true.
look at the compounding, accelerating growth effect that we're seeing in the AI boom at the moment, from the technology to the tools, specifically if we're talking about now just on the music landscape, it will be an incredible tool for artists. So I'm very, very excited about that. I think as labels, it's our job to help steer the conversation on the value of our partners' rights. And there's everything going on at the moment with these AI platforms that are training their AI agents, their platforms, on content that they have no right currently to train on. So that opens the door to huge, long-term copyright infringement. So I think we're in this very interesting place at the moment where AI is here, it's coming, it's now. Part one of the problem is we need to, as an industry, stick together, hold hands with the artists, and use that power to value the art that has already been released, so it's not infringed upon for future generations. So it can be inspired, but it shouldn't be infringed upon. So I think that's part one. Part two is, when you and I go to a birthday party or a wedding, we'll hear Bruno Mars, we'll hear Earth, Wind and Fire, we'll hear Taylor Swift, we'll hear Michael, we'll hear Prince, we'll hear artists that were released that we can connect with before we were even born.
Yes.
My question is, will Gen Beta or Gen Alpha, will they have the same affinity towards artists like Bruno or Taylor, the iconic artists of our generation, the same way as how you and I feel about Prince and Michael?
I mean, it's an interesting,
I
it's
think
unknowable.
they will.
Okay.
So, by the way, I think they will. I think how they will consume those songs and how they will consume those artists, the mediums will be different. I think that there is a forever drug with great music and with great art.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's our job to, as an industry, as we move forward, especially with what's going on with the AI and the tools, I think it's really important that we are positioning ourselves for the next generations. We're positioning them to discover the Brunos and the Taylors of today, like how you and I had the opportunity to discover Prince and Michael, for example.
Something I've been thinking about a lot. So I'm our primary AI music reporter. So this is something I just think about all the time. Name, image, likeness, voice rights. These are things that are very important for celebrity artists, some of which are signed to Atlantic, as well as many other record labels. I think that in the future, given we have the capacity for very realistic AI deepfakes, but also the capacity for artists to maybe license out their voices and do interesting new things with them, could you imagine in the future the label having any role in those type of rights? Because those are not typically associated with record labels, but since record labels are working hand in hand with artists on their copyrights, is that something you could imagine a label getting involved with in the future?
Give me an example of, paint a real life scenario of what you've just explained there.
An artist who is signed to a record label wants to license out their voice, maybe to other consumers who want to make music and use their voice, and that's something that they find to be interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that the record label would kind of help make that partnership and work with them on that kind of stuff, or is that something that doesn't really fall into the label domain?
So I think, like covers, we've seen the extraordinary success of covers. In that example you just painted, I think it's our responsibility as the label and the partner of the artist, if they want their music to be recorded by a synthetic artist or another artist through AI with their voice and their name and their likeness, I think they have every right to want that. I think it's our job to protect them, to protect their rights, and to make sure that they're fairly compensated for doing so.
But should labels get a cut of that?
It all depends on what the contracts are with the artists and the labels now versus what they were versus what they will be. I think ultimately, it doesn't matter what the partnership is. A label artist partnership is it's multi-dimensional. A label might not share any of the revenue that an artist has on their touring on the road.
Yeah.
But it's very important that a label can help an artist grow to the level where they're able to go and sell out stadiums, because that in turn is able to proliferate the brand, the streams, the sales come back. It's one full circle. So if they're not obligated to share in any of the revenue, I still think it's their responsibility to help and push as much as they can do.
Mm-hmm. And one last question about kind of the future of labels. It feels like since early 2024, there have been shakeups at pretty much every major music company, even in the indies too, where a lot of people are thinking about restructuring and reconfiguring what are their priorities at the label. And one thing that I've seen at multiple companies is the idea of centralizing certain services. So just using an example, this is not to call them out specifically, but like Interscope and Capitol now have a shared sync department. Previously, they both had their own sync departments. For those who might be listening and not know what that is, it's like film TV licensing. That
sounds like perhaps maybe a cost-cutting exercise.
I'm wondering, is centralizing services something that you're interested in within Atlantic Music Group?
If it works for the artist,
mm-hmm.
And it works for the artist team, we look at things through the prism of what can we do to best service the artists. There's dollar and cents. As long as we're given a budget,
mm-hmm.
as long as you're within your dollars and cents, you use that. You've got to be able to allocate the right resources to all for the artist. It's got to work. So if centralizing some services is as you say, is a part of that, then
mm-hmm.
sure. As long as it works for the artist, then fine.
Well, Elliot, this has been a great conversation. I wanted to end this off with something that we do on every episode of On The Record, which is called Make Me a Playlist. So I'm going to ask you to make me a playlist of 3 different songs falling into 3 different categories. The first one is a song that you can no longer gatekeep.
Clairo is the artist.
Okay.
I would say there's this album of hers I gatekept, Sling. There's a song, you know what I'm going to say? Amoeba.
Well, that is one of my favorites.
Okay, so you knew this one.
Oh,
so
yes.
you know your stuff.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm a big
I love
Clairo
that
fan.
song.
She's so great.
The greatest.
So great.
I
think that Sling was highly underrated. Charm got the attention that I thought Sling also should have got.
Sling was an incredible album. It was released right at that pocket of the pandemic, right sort of beginning of 2021, where it was a difficult time to release music. But I think people are you can't gate Clairo anymore.
Blouse is my favorite one on that record. That was a great one. Second one is a favorite throwback.
Let's go with September, Earth, Wind and Fire.
Classic. Can't go wrong.
Nope.
A guilty pleasure.
This one's bad. Okay. In the best of ways.
Okay. Yes.
I can't stop listening to Paris Hilton, Stars Are Blind.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a fantastic pick.
Do you know what? It's not. I was trying to be cool. It's not even a guilty pleasure. It's just a pleasure.
It's great. I feel like it's gotten more attention now in the last couple of years.
As it should. It's a banger.
It is a good one. Well, thank you so much for coming, Elliot. This was so much fun. And we'll have to have you back again soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, another big thank you to Elliot Grainge for coming to the studio and talking to us about his first year at Atlantic. And now for a rundown of what's going on the Billboard Hot 100 chart for the week of October 4th, 2025. Die With a Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars is back at number 10. Love Me Not by Raven Lenae falls to number 9. Justin Bieber's Daisies is in the 8th spot again this week. Lose Control by Teddy Swims is up this week to 7. Manchild by Sabrina Carpenter falls to the 6th place. Your Idol by Soulja Boys comes in 5th. Morgan Wallen and Tate McRae's duet, What I Want, sticks at number 4. Soda Pop by Soulja Boys rises to 3. Ordinary by Alex Warren stays at number 2. And finally, the number 1 song of the week on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, with 7 total weeks at number 1, is Golden by Huntrix from the K-pop Demon Hunter soundtrack. That's our show. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, I'm Kristen Robinson, and this has been On The Record.